Good morning, and thank you all for joining us. I'm joined, of course, by Department of Environmental Services Commissioner Norm Jones and Mark Murphy, CEO of Greenlight Networks, to make an exciting announcement, as well as, I believe, Council Vice President Willie Joe Lightfoot is on the line. In ordinary times, selecting the location for a news conference is important for communications, and we work hard to pick the right visual backdrop to help us tell a story of the news we're announcing. Well, for today's announcement, we couldn't have picked a better location than right here in cyberspace. We've all developed a new appreciation for the internet these days. Our virtual news conferences are just one example of how the internet is keeping us connected in this time of social distancing. That's why I'm happy to announce that the city has reached an agreement with Greenlight Networks that will allow Greenlight to expand its high-speed fiber optic network to thousands of households across the city of Rochester. I want to thank Commissioner Norman Jones and his team, along with our law department, for all of the work they've done to help us reach this agreement, which will build on the work that we did in our telecommunications code. I know I speak for a lot of people when I say that we're excited to see Greenlight expanding in the city of Rochester. Greenlight has been a true success story. Greenlight is a Rochester company that is gaining national attention. In 2019, they were recognized as the fastest internet provider in New York State and one of the three fastest providers in the country. They're growing fast, and I'm happy to say that their plans include Rochester, Greenlight's own hometown. This is the first license agreement that we have reached with residential internet service providers since the city adopted its new telecommunications code last year. A major goal of our new telecommunications code was to expand access to high-speed internet across our city, which will attract new businesses. And that in turn helped us create more jobs, safer, more vibrant neighborhoods, and better educational opportunities for our children. This new agreement with Greenlight puts those goals into action, and we couldn't be more excited. This agreement supports our dig once policy. For instance, that means that whenever we dig up a roadway for any other purpose, like replacing a water line, we'll coordinate that with Greenlight so they can come in and install their fiber optic cables while the road is being dug up. This policy will save Greenlight money to protect our road and also the city money, and allow us to protect our roadways and minimize disruptions for our motorists and residents. In addition, the new code allows for in-kind services to the city, our libraries, and our school district. And that means that Greenlight will help us bridge the digital divide in our low-income neighborhoods, and for that, we are truly thankful. This COVID-19 pandemic is showing us that every student and family across our community needs access to internet services. And I'm happy to say that Greenlight shares that belief and is going to help us reach that goal. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mark Murphy, CEO of Greenlight, to tell us a little bit more about what he's going to be doing in the city of Rochester, and to thank him and his team for the extraordinary work and for supporting the city of Rochester during this pandemic. Mark?
Thank you, Mayor Warren, and I completely agree with you that this, despite the odd times that we're living in, this is a great way for us to kick off this news, and it is appropriate because with this pandemic that we're all living through, there is no more vital link to the outside world, whether it's people working or learning at home or finding a way to entertain themselves than over broadband internet. And I just want to once again thank you and Mr. Jones, as well as your legal team for working together. I think this environment served as a good backdrop for us to get together on the key points so that we can ensure that we're bringing high-speed internet over a fiber optic network through more people in Rochester, because now more than ever, this is critical to the way people live their lives. We've seen an incredibly large increase in bandwidth utilization on our network because people are working, learning, and entertaining families at home. And with our fiber optic internet, we think that there's no more reliable way to deliver that speed. Our employees have been working throughout this. We're just over 30 days now since our employees have been working at home, but our technicians are showing up to work every single day to make sure that our network is running, that we're getting to as many people as we can. We're doing everything we can to keep them safe and to keep our customers safe. So we've been working with a lot of local companies in the community to supply us with the mask, with the shoe covers, with the gloves, with the hand sanitizers from our friends at Rochester Midland and Iron Smoke, with the face shields from Century Mold. The community is all coming together, we're working together to keep each other safe and to make sure that we're able to deliver the services that we are. So with that as a backdrop, we're extremely excited to get going and getting construction going again in the city of Rochester. We right now have about 11,000 households that we provide service to or can provide service to, and we've got about 45,000 throughout Monroe County. So with this agreement in place, it's going to allow us to pick up where we left off in the fall. We've got some projects that had been sidetracked. We're looking ready to get those going again. The initial one is going to be not too far from our office here in the Park Ave area with our Harper district. We're going to get that up and going, and then shortly thereafter in the Cobbsville and Beckwith area in the back half of the year, probably closer to the fourth quarter, we'll get that going again. So at a minimum, we think we're going to get to another 1,200 households in the city this year, and a significantly bigger number as we go in 2021. The planning for this does take some time. And in particular, getting easements into private areas and into some certain blocks are a challenge for us, and they're going to continue to be a challenge for us. But we're happy that the city is going to work with us to help identify areas and community groups that might help us get those things done a little bit faster. These times also create opportunities. So Governor Cuomo recently has put in place an executive order to allow our folks on our easement team to be able to get easements over video and get those notarized over video, whereas before we had to be in person. So that actually may allow us to get some of those things done more quickly and more efficiently. During our negotiations, certainly you, Mayor, and your staff have offered us a lot to go, not only on the easement side, but we've talked at great lengths about how we can go about finding ways to bridge the digital divide in our community. We're excited to work with you and your team on that, as well as the community at large, and identify those areas where we can do the most good. So no question that we've all been living virtually, and I think now people really see the value of having a reliable, very high-speed internet service in their home. Online learning, I know if my house is any example, there's two of us working all the time. There's both of our kids are going to school all day, and the one that's really happy about it, of course, like everybody, is their dog. So our dog is very pleased that we're home, but we're looking forward to getting back to normal. But until then, we're happy to play a part in helping our community get through this pandemic, whether it's again through education, through work, or through entertainment. Finding some ways to enjoy life in this time is really important, and we're happy to work with you and your team to get this done. So let me turn it back to you, Mayor Warren.
Thank you, Mark. And again, thank you to you and your team for supporting our city and our residents. I know that they are definitely excited to hear that Greenlight is expanding in our community. I have received several calls since this pandemic started. When's Greenlight coming? I've signed up. And so we're excited to have you expanding in our city, and also recognizing that City Council will have legislation to approve the master license agreement soon. And I know that President Scott is waiting for that legislation to get to her. I am going to turn it over to Justin to open it up for questions from the media for Mike, Mark, or myself, or Norm Jones, who's on the line. Justin?
That would help. Hi, good morning. The first question is going to come from Brian Sharp at the DNC.
There we go. Okay, good morning. Can you hear me? All right?
Yes.
Yes. The question I get for both of you, Mark, if I understood right, I had missed one of the locations that you're going into, but I think you said Park Avenue, Cobbs Hill, Browncroft. I was wondering what the plan is to get out into the lower income neighborhoods, affordable housing developments, etc. And so that question for Mark, as well as for the city, how you plan to maybe expedite that investment.
Mark, if you want to start off and then I can finish up.
Sure. And so the areas initially, again, are Park Ave and Harper, as well as Cobb's Hill and Beckwith. In terms of areas where the economics are maybe not as strong, we are already in actually a few affordable housing communities now, as well as in a few of those areas in and around Lake Ave. And we're looking to do more. I think we're going to be collaborating with the mayor to determine where, like I said, the areas that we can do the most good, most efficiently. So we're here. I think, again, we've got some great partners that are building affordable housing that we'll continue to partner with as those opportunities come up. And then, I think what it really still comes down to is finding ways where we can get the most interest. And so that's going to be a big part of our work with City Hall is to determine, how we can get more engagement in the community, how we can get more, not only interest for our service, but I think internet in general. I mean, I think there's opportunities for us to increase internet utilization in the city. If you look at the statistics right now, it's a little bit, and certainly the areas you're talking about tend to be lower in terms of internet usage in those homes. So I think there's some ways we can collaborate to help people learn what they can do on the internet. Certainly times like these make it even more critical, but I think there's a lot of steps that we're going to take together to help bridge the digital divide.
So as Mark indicated, we're going to be working in partnership with Greenlight to identify those areas where we see the most need and where we have the greatest digital divide. And then they will be assessing how to get the easements that they need in order to install that fiber. The reason why they are going into the areas that they have outlined thus far is because they have those easements. They can hit the ground running in those neighborhoods right now. And a lot of those neighbors have already signed up for the service. In the other areas, we have to do outreach. We have to make sure that we are communicating. We're going to be doing that with our neighborhood service centers, and we have many of our neighborhood service center administrators on the line as well. And so this is definitely going to be a partnership in trying to make sure that everyone that wants internet access can have high-speed internet access. And we're going to work collectively with our Department of Environmental Services and our neighborhood and business development team to make sure that we're getting Greenlight the information that they need in order to go into those more challenged areas. And working in partnership with these not-for-profit housing providers and putting in the fiber as they're starting to build those particular housing projects, developments, then it will be easier for them to actually get those residents up and running as well.
Thank you, Mayor. With that, Brian, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I was just wondering, we saw with just the current situation we're in, where the libraries had offered hotspots and those went in like a matter of maybe a few hours. Is that any sort of stopgap opportunity that Greenlight could provide, either in providing hotspots or providing wireless networks to these neighborhoods that would not require the infrastructure?
For us really to provide that, we would need the infrastructure in place to be able to provide any meaningful service. We do, again, we've got hotspots in some of the communities that we do serve that we work in conjunction with the developers. So folks like Pastone and Conifer in particular, who are in those affordable communities. But it would be difficult for us to provide service without infrastructure being in place. So while we'd love to do that, it would really be impossible for us to do that without having that infrastructure.
And Brian, so you know, it is something that I know that Rock the Future is, as well as the RMAPI, has been looking at in utilizing those MiFi web hotspots. So we've been talking to the city school district and also our community partners about accessing and getting more MiFi hotspots, especially since it is part of every indication that students will not be going back to school this year. And we want them to be able to continue to receive a quality education over the Google Classroom and other methods of learning. And so this partnership with Greenlight would make sure that, you know, in the future, as we start to go forward, that this, of course, in our city would not be a problem and people will have access. But in the meantime, as the stopgaps, we are working with community partners to fill in those gaps so that students and families can have access to be able to do the work that they need to do over the internet.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next question will come from Patty Singer at the Minority Reporter.
Hi, I'm curious, could you please give details of what these in-kind services in lieu of payments would be? I mean, is that going to be such as reduced monthly fees? And is there a dollar amount that goes with that in-kind services that the city is expecting?
So the law department is not online, so I can't give you the specifics of the dollar amounts, but basically in the city code, there is a provision for services to be laid to city facilities. So our recreation centers that many of our children go to and utilize, as well as our fire halls, our new police stations that will be laid, many different city facilities. And so that partnership, because many of those, especially with some of the changes that will be made to the 911 system, will need to have access to high-speed internet service providers. And so we're going to utilize Greenlight to help us with that. As it pertains to the dollar amount, our law department would need to get you that, and we'll get you that information as soon as we can.
So, I guess a follow-up to that, I mean, so when you go into these low-income areas, is there still going to be the same monthly fee charged, or would part of the in-kind services be reducing fees in low-income areas and not have the neighbors go door to door to get their neighbors to sign up for Greenlight, which is the current model for subscriptions?
We're going to be working collectively together with our neighborhood service center administrators to actually make sure that we get our residents the information that they need to sign up for the service. One of the things that we are looking at are, of course, is cost and reduced cost to residents across the spectrum that are in these challenged neighborhoods. And those details are yet to be worked out, depending on, of course, one of the things that our Office of Innovation did was look at who currently has internet service, who needs internet service, and where that digital divide lies. Of course, we're not given a franchise agreement to Greenlight. This is just a master license agreement, and therefore residents will be able to choose whomever they want to be their service provider, and we will give Greenlight the information as to where residents are having trouble accessing internet. But across the spectrum, we're looking at how do we provide services to our lowest income residents, but also make sure that it's affordable for them. And we're looking to our community partners, of course, to help with that. And that's an ongoing discussion that we will continue to have.
Thank you, Mayor. And next question will come from Alex Creighton at WXXI.
Good morning. Just to double check, the Greenlight plans, they start at $50 a month. Is that the least expensive plan?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to
$50 for 500 megabits down. And again, it's generally 50 megabits up during the this pandemic. We increased everybody's upstream bandwidth to be synchronous with their downstream. So at this point, it would be 500 by 500.
Okay, thanks.
All right, next we have Patrick Mucinek from Channel 10. Patrick.
Good morning, everyone. This question is for anyone. So Mayor Warren or Mark Murphy, please jump in. Take COVID-19 out of the picture. How long has this been in the works to get Greenlight into the city of Rochester?
So Greenlight was already working in the city of Rochester. Then we passed the telecommunications code, and there was this requirement of some charges that we needed to work through with the master license agreement. Some of our residents contacted us and really wanting to make sure that Greenlight continues to provide and expand in the city. And so we have been working with Greenlight, especially on a digital divide for probably our first meeting was back, I believe, in October, November of 2019. And then, we talked about what would be required to deal with the digital divide and look at some of these more challenged neighborhoods as Greenlight started to expand their network and look at building the infrastructure outside of the city of Rochester. And then in around March, early March, some of our residents that have been looking for service, of course, there was a stop in installation because a master license agreement had not been reached at that point in time. And so we again came back to the table, worked diligently to make sure that Greenlight also understood our master license agreement, but also we could work together to make sure that the most challenged neighborhoods would be a part of the discussion as well. So this is something that we've been working on for a while, but the pandemic has accelerated our discussions, and we're thankful that Greenlight has been willing to work with the city in making sure that we can try to get internet and high-speed internet quality service to every community across the spectrum, and especially those communities that have already signed up and have been in the queue for a while. Mark, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I think that sums it up pretty well. I think some of the things that we had to go through were just simply clarifying a few specific points. And, I think the mayor and her team have been great to work with. We had some very good and productive conversations. And I think to her point, this may have just accelerated things by a little bit of time, but I think we were heading down the right path over those few months preceding this.
Do you have a follow-up
Question, and this is for Mr. Murphy. Obviously, at the station, we've for the last few months have been getting, some complaints about Greenlight redlining certain neighborhoods. One house will have it, but the house across the street can't get it. What would you like to say about the expansion plans and the redlining of neighborhoods?
Well, what I would say is redlining is an awfully serious thing to toss out, and that's not something that we simply do. And that is, it's for us, the challenges, and the one in particular you point out, tend to have more to do with, and almost exclusively had more to do with, our ability to get an easement to a particular block than it does anything else. So as I said in my earlier comments, we're not going to impose ourselves on any homeowners or any neighborhood in particular. One of our values is we want to go where people want us to be and where we're welcome. So if we can get an easement to get into a block, we're going to go there. It's in our interest to get more customers, and so in any given neighborhood, it's a lot more efficient from a build perspective. And from a construction perspective, to build and do as much as we can when we're there initially, and not to have to go back later. So I think the complaint that you're referring to, again, has more to do with the fact that there may be a block or two in a given neighborhood that we've done that we simply couldn't get to because we weren't able to obtain an easement to allow us to get to a certain pole line or to do things along those lines. I mean, I think that's going to continue to be our biggest challenge. We've added, we've frankly got almost a half a dozen people now working in that area, and they're constantly going around trying to find more easements. And I think that has gotten better as we look through the back half of this year and what our construction schedule is. Most of the neighborhoods that we're going to do already have all those in place. And we try to communicate with the entire neighborhood as best we can to let them know if there is a delay or if there's a challenge with getting an easement. But we're not, we're certainly never going to begin an eminent domain proceeding on a resident to force them to allow us to build in their backyard. That's not who we are, and that's not productive. That's not being a good neighbor.
And I think that that's a great point that Mark outlined, because when you understand the Greenlight infrastructure and the Greenlight model, you definitely need an easement. Easements by law have to be witnessed and notarized. So you need the landowner to actually sign the document as well as provide that easement. And so that can be challenging. Those people that work in real estate law and try to get fence agreements and other things like that, they know that it can be pretty challenging to get to the resident, contact them, make sure that they get their signature notarized. And so I think that has been one of the challenges in the past, and part of this partnership will allow us to hopefully alleviate some of those challenges, because we will be working with our neighborhood service center administrators who have relationships with a lot of the neighborhood associations, to let them know that to help them understand what Greenlight is trying to do, why they're asking for this easement. And of course, in the city of Rochester, given the density of the city and the number of easements that are on different properties within the city, it can be a challenge at times.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Next question to come from Gino at City Newspaper. Gino.
Hi, good morning. How you all doing?
Good.
This is a question for Mark, I guess, but you mentioned before that about 1,200 households will be reached this year and more next year. How long reasonably do you think we'll be waiting for every household in the city of Rochester to have access to Greenlight?
I would say pre-pandemic, we hoped to get the better part of the areas done within 3 years or so. That might be slightly delayed given some of the things that we're going through, and so just some of getting access to poles and things like that. And that's, I think, one thing that I also want to point out is, easements are one thing, but the process to actually apply for and get licensed to be on utility poles, that also takes a long time. And frankly, if you go back and you look across Google Fiber's attempts in the market, there was nothing that frustrated them more than the ability to obtain easements and get on poles. So even a company of Google size was hamstrung by these efforts. So, our hope is that in 3 years we can get all this done. We think the agreement with the city is going to help us in the city. We still have some challenges that we're working with the utilities to allow us more predictable and consistent access to utility poles, and that's something that we work on all day, every day. If there was a way that we could just send people down the street with spools and spools of fiber and just put it up whenever and wherever we'd like to, we could have this done very quickly, but that's not how this works. So we're going to move as diligently as we can, but we think we're going to have a pretty significant amount of homes covered within the next 3 years.
Gotcha. Yeah, I do. The Dig Once policy, I was just hoping both of you could expand a little about how that works, who initiates the conversation when a public work project is happening that requires digging up a road, who starts that conversation about getting Greenlight involved in that?
I will turn it over to Commissioner Jones to talk about that, because it's not just with Greenlight, it's with all of our utilities companies that we're trying to make sure that when we go into the road that we don't compromise the road later on. And so, Commissioner Jones.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mark, for your leadership with Greenlight. I'll give you a prime example of how the Dig Once policy works. We did the Interloop East expansion. Greenlight was a first responder, very visionary. They laid their dark fiber in the ground while we were in the ground with everything was excavated. Now they have fiber connectivity in their downtown corridor, and they don't have to penetrate the ground because of being forward thinking and being able to put their fiber in the ground now. We're doing a project on Mount Hope Avenue where everything's going to be excavated. Greenlight is there with us now laying their fiber, having their conduit there. And when that project is opened up, they're there, and they won't have to do an excavation or penetration into our right of way to lay their fiber. That's an example of the dig once policy, and that's how we're thinking forward, collaborating and working with all the parties to make sure that when we're in the ground, they have an opportunity to put what they need to put into the ground in regards to fiber and market. And I think that works well. And I think what we did at the Interloop East is a prime example of how we can collaborate and work together.
And the reason why we instituted the dig once policy is because we found that when we was actually doing road construction, that within a year, a utility company would come in and they would get a permit, they would cut the road, and they would compromise the road, which ultimately would cause, of course, potholes. Given our weather in the freeze-thaw cycle, we wanted to make sure that as many companies that wanted to lay fiber, that needed to put in new infrastructure and other things, did that before we actually laid the road down and sealed the road up. Because anytime you penetrate the road after it has been sealed, it can cause problems later on for us. If you see these penetrations and these square blocks that have been done across the city, these are all utility cuts that happened after we actually laid the road, causing problems for drivers. And we want to minimize that and have our roads last as long as possible. So the commissioner and his team, along with many of our community partners, looking at working together to lay all of this down while we're in the road before the street has been reconstructed, is very, very important to maintaining the integrity of the road going forward. And if it is penetrated within the first 5 years of that road being laid, then the person that, or the entity that penetrates it, will have to pay to actually seal that road curb to curb. And that is going to allow us and our residents to have that, taxpayers to make sure that that road lasts longer and well into the future, which is something that wasn't done in the past.
Our last question comes from Kevin at RBJ. Kevin?
Yeah, Mark, could you just talk about the time frame, sort of how long it takes? All right, you've identified an area we're going in, but now we have to get the easements. Now we have to get permission to use the poles. And will that change now with this agreement? Will that time frame be shortened?
I don't know if it'll be shortened necessarily, other than the fact that I think, as the mayor and the commissioner just stated, I think on opportunities where there is current road construction going on, we're going to be more inclined to put conduits or dark fiber into the ground and get ahead of things. But I would say right now, our planning cycle is probably about a year ahead right now, just given all the things that need to get done. So we're doing everything we can with our partnership now with Greenlight Construction. That team is now fully engaged, and we're able to, we think there's more opportunities to shrink that down, that cycle down considerably. And I think, over the next 3 months or so, we'll begin to see tighter time frames. But there's a lot of planning that needs to go on for these network builds. There's a lot of engineering that needs to occur in advance, like you pointed out, easements and all those other things. So I'm not sure that this, other than the ability to not have to open roads once we're in there, I'm not sure that this necessarily speeds our process, but it certainly makes it more predictable.
Great, thanks, Mark. I do have one follow-up for the mayor, and that is, are there other firms you're in negotiations with? Have other firms, sought permission or interest? Do they have interest?
Yes, our law department and our DES team is working with other organizations, some smaller companies as well. So our goal is to gain as many master license agreements to make sure that our residents are served across the spectrum with the service that they want and that they choose. And this just allows us to have easier access and a better relationship with those providers that want to provide service to the city of Rochester residents.
Perfect. With that, that was the end of media questions. Mayor, or would you like to add any further comments before we close the presser?
I just want to again thank Mark and the Greenlight team. I'm really definitely looking forward to working together to make sure that every entity or every organization and business and resident in the city of Rochester that would like Greenlight service will be able to have that. We do know that it's a process by which we'll have to go by, but by working together, I know that we'll be able to serve our community well. Definitely want to thank our team in the DES department and the law department for working diligently on this and making this a priority. And of course, the residents of the city of Rochester that pushed and contacted us to make this a priority for them, especially given what they're facing as it pertains to the digital divide. And we'll work and continue to work in collaboration with different partners across the internet spectrum to make sure that everyone receives the services that they deserve and a quality service. And so thank you, Greenlight, for taking care of your hometown. We definitely appreciate that and looking forward to expanding your network here in the city of Rochester.
Mark, would you like to add anything?
I'd just like to, again, thank the mayor, Commissioner Jones, for all that they've done. I think this has been very constructive. I'm really looking forward to, again, taking opportunities to help do our part to bridge the digital divide. We take a lot of pride in being Rochester's hometown internet company, and we look forward to getting to as many people as we can to make sure that they've got great bandwidth so that they can work, live, and play faster, better, and a lot safer. So thanks to everybody for making that possible.